Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Nice to see you again. My name's Jeremy, and I'm leading these sessions this month. This is number 3. We got 5 Mondays this month. I think most of you have been to these sessions before, but if some of you may not have. So we just do some meditation, and I talk a bit about some Buddhist practices and Buddhist ideas, and then we have some time for question and answer and discussion. So feel free to ask any questions, and as I always say, feel free to disagree with anything I say. The Buddha encouraged people to debate all of his ideas, so that's always a good way to investigate and test out these ideas and meditation practices. So our theme this month has been what we call deceptive appearances. So that means things appearing to the mind in a way different to how they actually exist. And this is a big theme in Buddhist literature and Buddhist thought. And so the idea is that a lot of the problems that we experience in our mind are caused by these deceptive appearances, that things appearing in a way that's different to how they actually are. And this is described as ignorance, but it's a form of ignorance which is actually creating a mistaken reality. So it's sort of like a bit like a hallucination, I guess. So that's the idea that we're investigating, whether that's true or not, and something we do through analysis and introspection, which means looking at your mind. And so it's a very interesting topic, and I think it's quite sort of fascinating when you can identify something in your mind which is a sort of mistaken way of seeing something, and then you can, by correcting that, you can see how you're solving problems that arise from that mistaken view. Anyway, we'll start by doing some meditation before we get into philosophy. So, what is meditation? It's familiarizing your mind with a positive mental object. So it's focusing your mind on something that makes your mind peaceful, as opposed to something that disturbs your mind. And familiarizing, meaning making it familiar, making your mind familiar with that object, so it arises more easily or more comfortably in your mind. So the main tools we use for the process of meditation are called mindfulness, which in this context means remembering the object that you're focusing on, and introspection, which means investigating what your mind is doing to see whether it's wandered off or whether it's remaining focused on the object. So, important to start off with thinking about your motivation for why you're doing the meditation. And this is said to have an effect on the meditation and also on the result of the meditation, how it affects your mind. So you think about, why am I doing this? Ask yourself, why am I doing meditation? So we're doing meditation because we want to make our mind more calm, less disturbed, and to remove things like anxiety and anger and depression and doubt and things that are bothering our mind. So that's why we're doing it. So we're doing this to benefit ourselves, make our own mind more peaceful, but also to be more useful to other people, more beneficial and also less harmful, at least less harmful. So we're not bothering the people around us if we're more calm and more understanding and more patient. So you think, I'm doing this to benefit all of the people around me, the people in my life, all the people I interact with, to have a positive effect on them in whatever way I can. And then sort of try and expand that out to include also the animals in your life, and expand it further to include all the people in your area where you live, and your city, your country, across the world, to try to have a positive, in some way or another, have a positive effect on as many beings as you can, including humans and animals. So that's the motivation. And then bring your attention to your body. Just think about your body, how your body feels. Make sure your body is relaxed, not holding any tension. You can sit in a posture that's comfortable for you. Also a posture that helps you to remain alert and not sleepy or drowsy. So normally that's with your back straight and your eyes mostly closed, a little bit open to let some light in. And then just bring your attention to your breath. Observe your breath moving in and out through your nose if possible. If your nose is blocked, it's fine to breathe through your mouth. So we're using mindfulness to focus our mind on this object, which is the breath. So we're resting our attention solely on the breath and preventing our mind from wandering off, thinking about all the other things that are going on in our life. Just giving your mind a break from all of those busy thoughts. So you're just placing your mind gently on that object of concentration, the breath. You might find it helpful to focus on the point just under the tip of your nose, on that sensation of the breath moving in and out past that point. You might find it helpful to count your breaths. So breathing in and out is one breath, as a way of keeping track, keeping your mind focused. If your mind wanders off, you just bring it back to that point of focus. Place it Use introspection to observe whether your mind is staying focused or is wandering off. So now that we've developed some degree of concentration, we'll use this concentration to focus on what's called the conventional nature of the mind. So this is the same meditation we've done in the last 2 weeks. So in this meditation we're focusing on the mind. We visualize the mind as being like the sky. So the sky is vast and clear, and the thoughts entering our mind are like clouds passing through the sky. In this meditation we're focusing particularly on the sky part of the mind, which is described as clear and knowing. So it's the clear awareness, unobstructed awareness. So rather than focusing on the thoughts passing in through our mind, we're focusing on the clear awareness that is aware of those thoughts. So this is like the vast, clear stillness in our mind. And it's always there behind all the busyness that's going on in our mind. So that's the idea, to focus on that part, that clear awareness. So if you find your mind thinking about something maybe that's happened today or is going to happen tomorrow, and so that's like the cloud passing through the sky, so you let go of your attention to that and return your focus to the clear awareness, the sky-like nature. So with this practice we're also using mindfulness and introspection. So mindfulness to make sure that we're focusing on the chosen object, which is the clear and knowing nature of the mind, and introspection to check whether our mind is wandering off to other things and to bring it back. So think of this clear, knowing mind as being very spacious, completely clear and pure, also very still and quiet. But also aware of everything that's happening in the mind. So again, if your mind becomes preoccupied with something or other, just let that go, and let that thought pass through like a cloud. Return your focus to the clear sky like mind. Okay, then when you're ready, just relax your concentration. So, how did you go with that? Any comments or questions? All clear? I think I particularly like that practice because I think it has as well as having the benefit of focusing on a neutral object like you do with the breath, it also has the effect of reminding you that your mind, there's more to your mind than just all the busy thoughts that we are preoccupied with all the time. And we tend to identify strongly with, particularly with the so-called afflicted states of mind, the problems that we have. So I think we tend to focus on those and identify with those. So when we find ourselves doing that, thinking, oh, I'm so angry today, or something like that, I'm so stressed, then you remind yourself with that practice that there's a lot more to your mind than the stressed thoughts. There's a lot more going on. I find that quite helpful. Hopefully you do too. I think it takes a while to get used to that idea, and the idea of thinking about the sort of that clarity rather than the thoughts, and letting go of the thoughts, just letting them pass through. So I think it's also in line with this idea in Buddhist thought about us having this enormous potential, which is a point that I talked about last week, and I think the week before. So that's kind of like the beginning point, I suppose, or a basic idea in Buddhism that we as beings with minds have this huge potential, or ability to develop our minds. And so whether or not you believe that we can become a Buddha is something to investigate. But I think we probably all agree that we have this ability to develop our minds, develop positive habits, and to let go of problematic habits that we've had. For example, you might notice that as you got older you became more patient, possibly. Things that used to bother you and upset you maybe don't bother you so much anymore, so maybe more tolerant. So I think that's, we can see that happening in our minds. It's possible to do that. So the idea is that because it's possible to develop these positive qualities and to reduce the negative qualities, that by continuing that process, and in Buddhism we talk about many lives, doing it over lifetimes, that eventually you can completely subdue and remove these afflictive states of mind and develop these positive states of mind, because they're arising based on causes and conditions, both the positive and the negative. So by identifying the causes of the negative or afflicted states of mind, by removing those causes, we can remove those states of mind, and vice versa. By identifying the causes of the positive states of mind, we can develop those. So that's the process. So that's what we're trying to do with meditation, to make our mind more familiar with those positive states of mind. So when we're talking about positive and negative, what do we mean by that? So I think the definition used is that any state of mind which is disturbing and uncomfortable and is sort of painful or harmful, but also states of mind that lead you to harmful actions, and lead you, for example, anger. So anger, you know from your experience, it disturbs your mind, you feel kind of churned up, and also leads you to harm others. Whereas the state of mind where your mind is peaceful and calm and feeling, love or compassion, concern for others, is peaceful and leads to, helping others. So we're trying to develop the positive ones and gradually reduce the negative ones. So as well as making our own minds peaceful and happier, we're also more able to help others too. When your mind's peaceful, you're more able to help others. So that meditation, I think, also is useful for reminding us that the afflicted states of mind they use the word adventitious, which means they're not in the nature of the mind, they're impermanent. So they're passing through, they arise like clouds for a while and then they pass through and dissipate. And so, when you have these thoughts like, I am such an angry person, and when you analyse, you see that that's actually not true, because the anger arises for a while and dissipates, so it's not, intrinsic to your being, otherwise it would be there all the time. But we don't have, generally anger comes and goes, or, frustration or anxiety or whatever is bothering you. And the advice from meditation teachers passed down through the ages is to focus firstly on the thing that's bothering you the most. So when you're doing these practices, start with generally people have one or two of these afflicted states of mind which are particularly bothering them the most. So it might be anxiety, or it might be attachment, or it might be anger. I think when I first became interested in meditation, it was because I felt that I was very angry. And so I wanted to find out ways of dealing with that. And then I think after doing those sort of practice, I found that it subsided a bit, but then I think attachment became sort of probably the main thing I needed to focus on. I think now it might be sort of stress, work-related stress, that I need to work mostly on. Patience, probably. But anyway, everyone's different and it changes throughout your life, but the advice is to focus on that. And that's the thing we're dealing with day to day. Apparently meditators, in these long retreats that go for many years, and they'll have a break and come out and sit around and drink tea and ask you, what's your biggest delusion? What's bothering you the most? And, I think it's probably laziness. Oh, really? Okay. I think mine might be attachment or fear. So I remember a really nice, I think it comes from Sufism, a nice saying that when you have these afflicted states of mind arising, you invite them in like a guest and sit them down and have a conversation with them, sort of ask them, where they've come from and where they're going to and what they want and what they're trying to achieve, and sort of like investigate in a sort of objective way. So I think we can be sort of objective and scientific. We don't have to have we don't have to be fearful of them. We can sort of, investigate them. Being fearful of your own afflictions, I think, is also a problem. It stops us from really understanding them. There's one meditation teacher that calls that the negativity of negativity. So as well as having these afflicted states of mind arising, then on top of that we think things like, oh, this is so bad, I shouldn't be having this, I'm so frustrated, I'm still thinking like this after all this time, and all this stuff that we pile on top of the negativity. So we're putting the negativity on the negativity and getting maybe more angry with yourself for having the anger, and that's making you more angry towards others and sort of builds on itself. So, and I think that's also particularly a problem when you're trying to do spiritual practice, because you're sort of putting this pressure on yourself to, I want to be better than how I was, and putting expectations on, I've been meditating for an hour a day for 3 years, so surely I should be better than I was, and I'm so frustrated with myself that that things aren't changing. So that's also creating another problem by putting that expectation on yourself. Okay, any questions about any of that? Does that sound reasonable? Feel free to disagree. Last week we were talking about attachment and aversion. So these are regarded as afflicted states of mind because, as I said, they're disturbing our mind. So that's something to investigate. Do attachment and aversion, do they disturb your mind, or are they just, like normal, like completely fine? So attachment is defined as exaggerating the good qualities of an object, and as well as exaggerating the good qualities, then projecting those good qualities onto the object. So it could be a person or a thing or an activity, an experience. So it's a form of exaggeration. And then aversion is similar, but you're exaggerating the negative qualities of an object or a person, and as well as exaggerating them, you're projecting onto them. So we sort of create these negative or positive qualities in our mind and then project onto that person or that object. So that's an example of a deceptive appearance, because on one hand we're creating these exaggerated qualities, good or bad, which are not found in that person or that object or that thing. And then, as well as sort of creating them in our mind, we're projecting them onto that person or that object. And this can just sort of happen naturally without us knowing. We can be completely unaware. So, and then we're just reacting to what is appearing to our mind out there, this exaggerated view. So what's an example of that? So that analogy I mentioned, I think last week or the week before, is this mythical creature, this stag that has this antlers, and when his antlers hit on trees when he's walking through the forest, it creates this scent. And the scent smells like a beautiful, attractive mate. And so he's sensing that there's this beautiful, attractive mate out there somewhere, and he's trying to find it. And then the more he chases after this imaginary mate that his antlers are crashing against trees and creating more scent, so driving him crazy. So this is said to be an analogy of attachment and what's going on in our mind when we have strong attachment, to a person or a thing. So as well as sort of exaggerating this kind of idealized image of the thing, we're also projecting it out there when it's actually appearance that's being created by our mind. So you can think of examples in your life probably when you've had very strong attachment, strong craving, wanting something very strongly, and then maybe later on or after you got that thing, realizing that it wasn't what you thought it was when you had that strong attachment. And then aversion, or we're talking about aversion that leads to strong afflicted emotions like anger, hatred, also anxiety. So it's the same. Your mind exaggerates the negative quality of that thing or that object, and then as well as exaggerating is also projecting it onto that person or that object or whatever it is. So that's leading to problems like anxiety and anger, hatred. You think of some communities in the world, I think when my grandparents were growing up in Melbourne, there was strong animosity between the Catholics and the Protestants. From a young age, they were taught to sort of hate each other, and the kids would, make up rude things about the other group. And so it was sort of like this example of a deceptive appearance that was sort of taught and created in their minds from a young age, and then sort of perpetuated in those two communities towards each other. And and obviously completely, illusory. You can't. The other group didn't have all those negative qualities. They were entirely projected, in the minds of one group onto the other. And that's happened, many times throughout human history, like the Hutus and the Tutsis in Rwanda. There were many, apparently, centuries of hatred between those two groups. They were taught from a young age, through generations, to hate each other. So it's sort of like intentionally creating this negative hallucination to perpetuate this kind of animosity. So you can see that's entirely, it's afflicted because it's causing all these problems, as well as the fact that hating someone is not a peaceful state of mind. When you compare a peaceful state of mind with a mind of hatred, you notice that hatred is not a happy state of mind. It's an afflicted, unpleasant state of mind. So those two groups are stuck in that unfortunate situation of perpetuating that animosity. So that's kind of an extreme example of creating a deceptive appearance, which is leading to afflicted states of mind and suffering. So then how do we overcome that? So I think the first technique for dealing with this problem of exaggerating good and positive and negative problems and then projecting is just to be aware of it happening. So I think that in itself is very useful for pacifying that. So when you find yourself getting impatient when you're driving, for example, and you start to feel this impatience building up, maybe for someone who's in front of you and is driving really slowly, and maybe they're on their phone and they're wandering all over the road, and you're in a hurry, and you feel this sort of tension, irritation rising up, and then they get even slower, or they're braking suddenly and being more dangerous, and your irritation's rising. So you can see that rising in your mind, and So the question then is that what is happening in your mind? Are you projecting these negative qualities onto that person, or is it valid? Are you having a valid understanding of of that person? So you might think, well, they're behaving like an idiot, so isn't it valid for me to feel irritated by that? And but then let's say you found out that person was your daughter or something. They were driving a car that you didn't know they drove, or some old friend, and then your attitude might change towards them, and so you're seeing them in a completely different light. Or maybe they were having a medical emergency, and there was some disaster going on, so then you might change to compassion. So then you can see that irritation was created by your mind and projected onto that person, and then the question, was it valid? But you were sort of seeing that quality as being within them, that projecting irritating person, annoying person, like irresponsible or reckless person, you're projecting that onto them. And then it turns out that they were having a medical emergency, and then you go, oh, sorry, take it back, and then you might feel compassion towards them or something. So it's sort of like that. Seeing how these are projections created by our mind because of how things are appearing to us. That's the idea. So by looking at it in a different way, then things will appear differently, and we're trying to look at things in a way that gives rise to positive state of mind as opposed to afflicted state of mind. Another example, I was thinking, I was riding along a bike track once, and I could see someone up ahead that I knew, and so I rang my bell, and they were thinking a cyclist coming past, so they moved to the side, and then I sort of rode up behind her, and I kept ringing my bell, and sort of impatient way, so she jumped further to the side, and still I was behind her ringing her bell, and she's kind of spun around to shout at me or something, and realised that it was me, and then started laughing. So in that case, you can see in her mind, firstly there's cyclist, and then annoying cyclist, and then really annoying cyclist, and then friend. So all these things are sort of something that's created by the mind depending on what's appearing to the mind. And so that's the idea, is to see how the way things are appearing is because we're interpreting the situation in a certain way. And what the Buddha is saying is that when we're interpreting things in a negative way that's causing affliction, we're actually misunderstanding the situation. So if we fully understood what's going on, this is a claim made by the Buddha, then our mind would naturally be peaceful and also compassionate. So that's an interesting idea. If we really understood people and what's happening for them, then we would naturally feel compassion towards them. We wouldn't feel irritation. And that's based on the idea that people are all experiencing various degrees. Everyone's trying to be happy and to avoid problems. That's what we're doing in every moment of our life, trying to be happy and avoid problems. But even though we've been doing that all of our life, and from a Buddhist point of view for many lives, we're still experiencing various problems, So that's the basis for compassion. So by understanding that, then we naturally feel compassion. And we're all the same in that. We're all in the same boat in that regard. So, what else? So other practices for dealing with attachment and aversion. So because they're based on an exaggerated view of the object, one of the practices is to try to try to see the object in the way that it is. So what's an example of that? A common example given in Buddhist literature is about the body. So we tend to, I think because our body is something that's very important to us, and we tend to be sort of idealize the body and get very attached to it, and also to the bodies of others, you know, so it's common for us humans to feel desire for other humans' bodies. So, and that's quite a good example because we tend to sort of idealize the body, I think. You know, tell me if you disagree with this, but we tend to idealize the body and see it in a way that's different to how it actually is. So there's a lot of meditations on the body where you meditate on all of the different parts of the body. So you think about, for example, the skeleton, and then all the muscles, and then the organs, and you know, the skin, and then all the systems. You have respiratory system and digestive system and circulation, etc., and nervous system. And so in that way, to change the view of the body, our own body and also others' bodies, by thinking of it as a collection of parts and systems, and also to see it as impermanent. So all of these parts and systems are constantly changing. So it's like a collection of constantly changing things, parts and systems. And so this, you can see how that's sort of very different to how we normally think of the body, you know. And also to focus on the problems of the body. For example, that the body gets old and, you know, develops, you know, disease and etc., and eventually dies. And so this is a way of sort of breaking down the idealization of the body and seeing it as, and also a way of dealing with our own mortality and our own aging by seeing it, this is the reality of having this body. We grow up and we eventually get old and die. If we're lucky, we'll get old. And so by doing that, it's said to, by having that more realistic view of the body, it overcomes, you know, various problems in relation to the body. Like, for example, feeling very proud of your body, you know, by understanding that your body is impermanent and is just a collection of parts, and when you're having strong attachment to someone else's body, you know, that's causing a problem by, for example, you know, you might be wanting to have a extramarital affair with someone, you know, and that's going to damage your family, so that's going to create a lot of problems for you and your whole family. So you can overcome that attachment to that other person by thinking of meditating on the reality of their body in that way, and the desire can, you know, be pacified by thinking about that. Because when we're having strong desire for another body, we're thinking of it as sort of like we're idealizing it, like exaggerating the good qualities, forgetting about all the bad, the unpleasant aspects of the body, forgetting that it's made of parts, forgetting that it's impermanent, that it's not going to last, etc. That's the idea. So we apply the same logic to anything that we're attached to. That sort of. Yes. So there are two different techniques. One is just observing the process of attachment and aversion, just observing it and how it arises based on these mistaken views and recognizing the mistaken views. And then the other one is sort of counteracting it by meditating on the opposite of that mistaken view, that exaggerated view. Yes, so that's quite a lot. Any questions about that? I feel like I'm talking a lot. Yes, please.
What kind of, I suppose, a reflection that technique you just discussed, you could use
In relation to the body, you mean? Yeah.
If you became, you know, unwell, or you suffered from cancer or
Mm.
something like that,
Yeah.
and were feeling resentful or angry, a range of emotions,
Mm.
might help.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it would. I mean, I think, and that's one of the ways it's intended to work, to sort of understand the reality of this body that we have and its various problems that are associated with having a body like this. So not just disease, but, you know, things like the fact that we have to get food or water every day at least, you know, and it's very susceptible to heat and cold And I remember one text that talks about it, the fact that you have to do things to maintain this body sort of implies that it's problematic. You can't just leave it alone. You can't just, like a tree in the garden or something. You've got to actually do quite a lot to maintain it every day. There's quite a lot of work involved in looking after this body. So it's problematic in that sense too. Yes?
At what point does attachment begin to exist? So we think of humans as being attracted to all kinds of things. People, material things, and what have you. That's suggests a sort of natural, almost gravitational force, part of our existence. But at what point does attraction become attachment? And at what point does attachment become too much attachment?
Yeah, good question. I think it's, I guess you'd say it's like a continuum, so you can have very sort of subtle levels of attachment that we may not even be aware of. From the Buddhist point of view, it said that we are attached to existence itself, like this feeling that I am, that's a sort of subtle form of attachment. I am here, this is me, this is my world, this kind of thing. And then you have more and more, more obvious or more gross attachment arising and building on that from that sort of root, and getting stronger and stronger till you have, really gross forms like strong, addiction or, attachment that would lead you to, for example, kill somebody, a very strong attachment if someone, stole your partner or something and you would, you wanted to kill them. So that would be a very probably strongest form of attachment.
In terms of Buddhist theory, is there a degree of attachment that's considered to be excessive? Is there a tipping point?
Well, I guess the objective, the ultimate goal is to become enlightened like a Buddha, and the Buddha doesn't have attachment because it's a mistaken view based on a exaggeration of the object and also, projecting qualities onto an object that it doesn't have. So from that point of view, attachment can be completely removed, is the Buddhist view. But for us as sort of ordinary beings, so-called ordinary beings, we're beings that haven't developed realizations, haven't achieved certain spiritual level, that attachment will always be there in some form. And so what our challenge is to sort of deal with it and sort of work with it and try and be in charge of it rather than it being in charge of us, I guess is the idea. Yeah. Because there are practices where you can use attachment in your meditation as way of, sort of like power, as a sort of energy source, I guess you'd say. Yeah. But then the Buddhist view is that, of sort of beginningless lifetimes, that we've been taking rebirth beginninglessly, so there wasn't actually a beginning. So that's the idea. And also the idea is that attachment arises from, as I said before, ignorance, like mistaken view of the way things exist. So based on that mistaken view, then we develop attachment towards things that appear positive and aversion towards things that appear negative. Particularly mistaken view about this self, about the I. So the things that appear useful, attractive to the I, we want to pull them close, and the things that appear threatening, harmful, unpleasant, we want to push them away.
So apply that theory if your attraction itself is illusory. Yeah, based on a mistaken view of how things are. Yeah. But we sort of have to, as I said, deal with the more problematic things first and not try to be perfectly free of attachment and aversion. Yeah. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Good question. So I think in those two cases, like for example,
with people getting loved ones getting old and passing away. So the idea is that through familiarizing your mind with the reality of the situation, that it reduces the suffering. So if you have this strong view that your parents are going to be with you forever, and you want to hold on to them, and that's obviously contrary to how things actually are, because we're definitely going to be separated at some point. So by familiarizing your mind with that reality that I'm impermanent and they're impermanent, we're only here for a relatively short time, and just familiarizing your mind with that, through meditation perhaps, or just thinking about it, then when they do pass away, then it's much less of a shock, because it's the sort of a reality that you knew that was going to happen. So that's the idea, is to familiarize your mind with reality. Yeah. And you can apply that same logic to anything in your life, like a job, for example. You might be really attached to a position in an organisation, but you need to be aware that it's not going to last forever. One day it's going to be gone. So, and your youth and your beauty, and that's going to pass. And also the idea is that by accepting that impermanence of those things, you can actually enjoy them more, because you don't have this sort of fear of losing them, because you sort of accept that they're here for a while and then they're going to be gone. So you're not sort of trying to hold on to them and getting anxious about losing them. That's the idea, yeah. Enjoy the impermanence of the moment and not try to hold on to something that you actually can't. It's impossible to hold on to, yeah. Yes.
I was wondering, in view of our susceptibility to illusion and delusion, how do we know that we know anything? How do we know that knowledge is possible at all?
Yeah, good question. So I think the Buddhist answer to that would be that we're experiencing things like happiness and unhappiness. I think we all agree with that. I'm assuming you feel free to disagree, but I think that's something, we're all wanting to have more happiness and to push away less, and to have less suffering. So that's our shared experience, and we all agree that that's what's happening. So in that sense, it is happening, because that's our experience. So I'm not sure whether that, you would regard that as real, because that's something that we're all experiencing. But from the Buddhist point of view, that's real, because that's what we're experiencing, and that's enough to say that exists. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. That makes good sense. I was just wondering. I don't know if there was make it grand, like epistemology or something. But what you say is what you get. Makes sense.
Yeah, because when you investigate, like we were talking about an attractive object, let's say chocolate, and then, so we're projecting, when we're attached to chocolate, if you like chocolate, we're projecting some positive quality onto that object, and then we're desiring to consume it because of that thing that we're projecting. But when you investigate, you can't find that positive quality within that chocolate. Like, you can go down to the atomic level of the chocolate. There's nothing inherently positive about that object, and there were some other people who find it, disgusting or, not pleasant at all. So that kind of proves that there's nothing inherently delicious about the chocolate. So it's a quality you're projecting onto that. And another creature, like say an ant, for example, is not going to see it as chocolate at all, or maybe they do. I don't know about ants. Maybe a tadpole or something, some other completely different species. Not going to see it as even food. So even that foodness is something projected onto that object by our mind, because it's something that suits our body. It's consumable by our body, but maybe not for a tadpole. So again, even the foodness is something projected by our mind. So then it does sort of raise those questions, like what is actually there. And And it's talked about in the Buddhist idea of emptiness or shunyata, this idea that things only have these qualities that are labelled onto them by the mind. They're not sort of inherent within the object. So that's a big topic of philosophical debate, and there's different schools of Buddhist thought that will argue about exactly what that means. Actually, there's a course on that later this month if you're interested. I think on the 30th, a one-day course about emptiness. Yeah, so it's dealing with that exact quality, like how real are things, or what is real. Yeah, which is very interesting. Because go on. Yeah.
So is the shunyata there's no noumena essentially, there's no, it's just we're just creating a phenomena. So there's not an objective thing that's we're misperceiving collectively. It's just almost maybe we should just go to the course.
Yeah, go to the course. It's a huge topic, and when you start investigating, but basically you would say that objective reality does exist, but not inherently. So it's not. I think in philosophical terms, there's an idea of solipsism, sort of like that the whole world is just a fabrication of my mind, sort of thing. So that's not the Buddhist view. Things do exist out there, but they don't exist inherently. So they're existing in dependence upon being labelled by the mind. So exactly how that works is a big topic of debate. So, but yeah, good question.
Thank you.
Particularly when it comes to I, you do investigation of what am I and where am I, and then so you investigate your body and you can't find anything in the body that's me because it's all this collection of parts. So I'm not in any of these. I'm not in my legs or my arms or my torso or my head because they're all just body parts. So then am I in my mind? So then you investigate all the parts of your mind to see whether I'm in there. And am I in anger? Am I in attachment? And if I'm in one of those, am I in all of them or just one of them? So this is a very interesting investigation. And the conclusion is that what the I is something that is labelled, merely, the term used is merely labelled onto these aggregates of body and mind. So that's very interesting, I think. Yes, sorry, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so we're labelling delicious onto the chocolate based on our previous experience, I guess, of the chocolate and the smell maybe we're getting from it. Yeah, and then when you eat it, you're labelling. Yeah, so your mind is experiencing all these things and they're suitable to be labelled delicious, for me at least. Other people wouldn't, and probably other creatures wouldn't. But there's nothing from the side of the chocolate that is delicious, is what I'm saying. The deliciousness is entirely projected onto the chocolate by our own mind. But it's not appearing that way, is it? It appears delicious. You see the chocolate and you think, oh, that's really nice. I really want that. Deliciousness appears to be coming from the side of the object. Yeah. So that's the idea, to understand how that deceptive appearance is affecting your mind. Yeah. Yes. Okay, thank you. Yes, sorry, Christian. Yeah.
You spoke before about protections of anger.
Yeah. Yes.
And from this perspective, we have projection of fear in certain situations.
Yeah.
Of the future, of job, or whatever.
Yeah.
How can we
Yeah, good question. So how to deal with fear and anxiety. And so in many ways it's similar to anger because you're identifying the threat. So let's say example is something like, giving a public talk. Often people find that nerve-wracking and anxiety arising in their mind. Or it could be, that example. So you're projecting this sort of threat onto that thing, the situation, and you're seeing it as possibly, as something that could harm you. And so based on that, then you're feeling this sort of anxiety and maybe dread, as it gets closer and closer. And so the first thing is to try and analyze the level of the threat, whether you're exaggerating the threat. And so in the case of public speaking, we tend to exaggerate the threat because we're seeing it as a much bigger problem than it actually is. And then you can compare it to other threats. I often use the example of driving in a car. So I think each year in Australia is about, 1,500 people are killed in a motor accident. But no one's died from giving a public talk. Well, maybe you could have a heart attack, maybe, but it's very unlikely. But so the threat is much less. But in our mind, we don't feel any fear about hopping in the car and driving to the shops, but we do feel fear about giving a public talk. So our mind is exaggerating the threat in that case. So using that kind of analysis is one way by identifying that it's exaggerating, your mind is exaggerating the threat, comparing it to other threats. And another technique, I think, is to just observe the sensation of the anxiety, like we did before with that meditation on the sky and the clouds. So they think of the anxiety as being like one of those clouds. So you focus on that sort of clear mind and you allow that feeling of anxiety to sort of arise and just sort of observe it. That's another technique. Pardon? Sorry? Yeah, well, the idea is that, because thoughts are impermanent, that they'll stay for a while, but they won't stay forever. And we know that from our experience. So, and also when you observe something, you're not, You're not buying into it, you're not encouraging it, you're sort of observing it objectively. So that's said to have the effect of pacifying the affliction, just observing it. So the anxiety arises because we're thinking of the threat. Oh no, this could happen, that could happen, this could be terrible, and all this, narrative going on in your mind. But by just observing the feeling, that's said to, pacify it, relax, you can let go. So that's two techniques. Then that meditation on emptiness is another one, where you think that the self and the thing that you're fearful of and the fear itself are all just what they call empty, as in just something that's being projected by your mind. So there's some techniques, yeah. I think anxiety is a big problem for many of us, including myself. Okay, thank you everyone. Thanks for listening. Any questions? Good discussion. See you next week.